What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is NCIS Season 14, Episode 21, One Book, Two Covers. So this one was a bit more of a Torres-centered, focused episode, and it was pretty good for what it was. You know, I've talked about before how Torres and Quinn haven't really, they're kind of the ones that are sort of taking over for Tony and trying to take his place. Torres is pretty much trying to be a younger version of Tony. Quinn is more like the older, experienced agent that Tony became later on. So it's almost like you put them together and you become what Tony was throughout the majority of the show. You know, you've got the two sides of Tony, the experienced agent and the young, suave, trying to pick up women every day type of agent. So they've tried to come in, they've tried to become their own characters as well, though. They've tried to, they've had a few stories thrown in there with Quinn, with Torres, trying to kind of give them a bit of an identity outside of just, oh, we're taking Tony's spot. And for what they've done so far, it's been okay. You know, there have been a few episodes like the last one that I just felt was kind of pointless. You know, didn't really provide much. Then they've had a couple where I really did start to feel something for them. So this one, Torres, we start to see a little bit of what happened before. You know, he became an undercover agent in some other operations. We learned that he was undercover in this one gang that was doing all these robberies and stuff. And so he sees that this gang is still in operation, even though he thought he took it out. And so we start to learn that apparently there's something else going on here. There's something a little bit deeper, and we figure out that he actually planted evidence to get the leader of this gang put away. And so we find out that this one guy that he was friends with when he was undercover, and he convinced him to testify against the leader, and that got him into witness protection. Well, we find out that apparently because he testified against the leader, he was kind of seen as a hero because the former leader was evil and everybody hated him. And so he began to run the entire gang from inside of witness protection somehow. They never really clarified that. But we see that he is running this, and so there's one guy who, I can't remember exactly why they had him killed, but he's the Navy officer we see that died at the beginning of the episode. And so that's kind of how this whole thing kicks off, and then all of a sudden there are these two guys that show up dead that were suspects, and I don't really remember why they were suspects. Like, honestly, the case on a whole wasn't that interesting, but the stuff with Torres that was involved in the case. And so I remember that part of it, but the stuff on the other side of it was not as memorable. But they had these two suspects that both of them end up dead, and then the guy calls Torres using a voice changer and says, "You have your killers, your investigation ends now, or they find out what you did." And we come to find out about the planting of evidence through that. So all in all, it ends on a note that you'd expect it to end. They go to Torres goes to kind of pay this guy off, which it's not actually happening because that's not something that NCIS would do. But he pretends to pay him off, and then all of a sudden the guy's going through the money. He says, "Hey, check there. There's something else in there for you." He goes even deeper, and then they're handcuffs. He's like, "Those are for you. The feds are here for you." And he's like, "What's going to happen when I give him this tape?" He's like, "I don't know." And so Torres goes to handcuff him, but then the guy turns on him, knocks him down, and then runs outside, gets on his motorcycle. There's a motorcycle chase. Torres eventually catches up to him on his motorcycle and then kicks him out. And then they arrest him and take him to prison. And Gibbs says, "Well done, take the night off." So all in all, it's a pretty straightforward episode. But the one thing that works for me is because, like I said, they've been trying so hard to give Torres and Quinn an identity. At times it hasn't worked, but this one did. So even though I've kind of seen this type of story before, not necessarily on NCIS, but I have seen this story before where you have somebody who did something that was wrong for a good reason, and they're having to deal with that mistake, and nobody else really knows about it, and it's something from their past that's kind of haunting them. I've seen this story done so many times before, but in this case, it does kind of help bring a bit of an identity to Torres. I can't ever remember Tony doing something that was wrong or illegal to get the job done. He might have at one point. I don't really remember because it's been so many seasons. But this kind of just, it provides a little bit more insight into Torres. We see him finally decide he's going to work with the team on this one instead of just going it alone. He could have just gone over there, beaten the guy up, and said, no, you're going to jail. But he does tell Gibbs and Quinn about it and brings them along. So we see he is starting to get accustomed to working with the team a little bit more, and that's good to see. Because that's been his problem throughout most of this season. It's just that whole, I want to be a lone wolf. I want to do this on my own. And he's even talking to Vance in this one and saying, look, I'm no use on the bench. And Vance tells him the story about the guy who is on the bench and helped, I don't know NBA names. It was some professional basketball player, and he helped out from the bench. And so he's kind of making the point, he was just there to provide help for the star player. And sometimes your best moves can be made from the bench, so what's your move going to be? So I like the fact that we're starting to get a little bit more of a growth from Torres, instead of just seeing him do the same thing over and over again, being stubborn and all of that. We see him actually starting to become his own character and grow as a character as well. So that's always good to see. As far as everything else in the episode, I mean, the case, like I said, the Torres part of the case was memorable. The rest of it really wasn't. The whole game in the first place was kind of dumb. Like, they did, what was it called, double tapping, I think? And it's just so pointless. Like, they shoot him in the head and then shoot him in the heart. Like, why? It seems like a waste of a bullet. Everybody else in the team, like Quinn, doesn't really do much. Ellie at the beginning of the episode is asking Torres, are you going to be at my painting party? And he's just like, unless you're painting naked bodies, count me out. I'm like, what is this? And they don't even really talk about it after that. Abby at one point, I think, may have talked about it. I don't know. Honestly, like, the rest of the episode in general was not very memorable. The Torres stuff was. So, on the whole, it was average. But I like the fact that we are getting more from Torres. So, that's about it for this episode. I know that sounds very, like, vague, and honestly, all these NCIS episodes are starting to run together. And I've talked about this before, how we're 14 seasons in, give us something new. To be honest, aside from the Torres thing, and mainly because Torres is a new character, the rest of it really wasn't new. The rest of it I've seen before. I've seen them have these conversations before. I've seen them talk about these things before. So that would be my only thing going forward. I want them to bring something new to the table. I want them to start to give us new cases, give us new stories to develop these characters. Because as it stands, I mean, most of these episodes I don't remember very well. I don't really remember these cases or these character developments as well, because for the most part they're kind of running together in my mind, because they're all very similar, they're all very same formula week after week. So going forward I would like to see something different, but that's about it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What did you like and dislike about this episode? Let me know, we can talk about and discuss all the good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future NCIS reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.